Greetings, miniature fans. This is Monty in the Bay Area. I've got some beautiful miniatures that have been painted for me by Frontline Gaming, and I wanted to just enjoy them as I was unboxing them. But I somewhat stupidly got caught in not even a rant, just a thought, which ultimately didn't translate well, and I've tried to reframe my thinking, which is always difficult in these circumstances. Because I wanted to talk about the stuff I wanted to do with the channel. And one of the things I wanted to do with the channel, this is not a paid endorsement, by the way. I paid for these miniatures to be painted. And, yeah. But I wanted to start putting miniature painting reviews up. Like, actually, you pay a company, they paint some miniatures. What do they turn out like? These are beautifully done. So, hats off to, I think the guy's name's Austin, and also Jason at Frontline Painting, because this is just amazing. But I was trying to, in the previous two takes, well actually I had a package delivered as well, but in the previous take before the package delivery take, I was talking about Miniature Wargames, the movie, which is a Kickstarter that I put money into. I went back and listened to and watched the prior catalogue of Monty's reviews, just to get a sense of the flavour that I had to enact with regards to this particular YouTube channel, because, you know, it's been a while, and I did do a review on Speed Freaks, which, well, one of the things I like about this channel is either people strongly agree with you or they strongly disagree with you. And when they strongly disagree with you, like the infamous Tunnels and Trolls debacle, you usually get to, I get a sense that they're disagreeing with me for all the right reasons. So, certainly with regards to the Speed Freaks thing, I thought the disagreements were all for the right reasons as well. So, I wasn't feeling particularly bad about that. Anyway, so I'm unwrapping these beautiful miniatures, and I'm talking about Miniature Wargames the movie. So, Miniature Wargames the movie, I put money into Kickstarter about 2 years ago, and it took 2 years for the movie to come out. I work for a particular company, which, you know, doesn't really mean anything, but I work for a company that's, let's just say, well, I don't know how one would say. Anyway, I get access to a lot of really interesting documentaries, let's just say that. So certainly where I work, although it's not my professional part of where I work, I am very familiar with a lot of documentaries, and I absolutely love the documentary form. And I put money into Kickstarter periodically for documentaries in areas that interest me. So, and sometimes I don't put money in for documentaries that I don't think are going to do very well. So Miniature Wargames the movie, I put money in for a variety of different reasons, with the hope that the producer and director of this thing had, well, a backbone, I guess, a spine, let's just say it explicitly, since this is Monty's reviews and I don't mince my words. And yeah, I was sadly disappointed with what was produced for a variety of reasons. But the thing that I came stumbling through was that this notion that Miniature Wargaming has a political component to it, which I just find really abhorrent and very strange, and a narrative which I think is completely constructed. I've done a variety of different bits and pieces out in the world that people can access, associated with my perspective on a variety of things, but with the military specifically, and also the history of the military. And I'm someone who reads military history voraciously. I'm just going through the Nuremberg trials. Currently, I'm just at the got to be careful when unwrapping them. Can't be talking too much now. Got to give some devotion to these beautifully painted miniatures. These are just extraordinarily painted miniatures. They're perfect. The thing I like about this, which is really I'm getting a little rotating thing, which I'll be able to do for the upcoming miniature reviews as well, is that there's a level of paint job that you want, which is like, this is the Tabletop Plus quality. This is exactly what I would call Tabletop Plus. This is exactly what I'd call Tabletop Plus. Details are marked out slightly, but really they're a uniform, you know, they're uniform. They're beautifully uniform. I've got a lot of love for Steel Legion. I've got a lot of Steel Legion, and I love the way artists interpret things through their painting of Steel Legion in particular. And this artist has done an amazing job. I've got a bunch of Fred Reed miniatures, which I'll take out and show Fred Reed's interpretation, but this is just beautifully, beautifully done. So hats off to Austin, I think, and also Jason, who handles all the emails and stuff, who does the administrative work at Frontline. These are beautifully, beautifully done models, and really exactly what I'm looking for. So I've got an interesting thing here with the weapon poked out through the bubble wrap. So anyway, I was caught in how do you talk about the depoliticization of miniature wargaming, particularly associated with notions of the military and PTSD and all these things, when this whole thing has been artificially politicized for you by a group. And it's very difficult actually to talk about this coherently because we live in a world where you cannot offend people, or I'm certainly at least professionally trained that I cannot offend people. And there are so many of these topics where I find I'm deeply offended by them, but because I'm not even in a represented form in the general discourse, then my emotions and feelings and what have you, because they're not part of a dominant narrative, either of the nominally opposing dominant narratives. So let me just get this guy out very carefully so as not to damage his rifle in removing this. Oh, las gun, motherfuckers. Sorry. I don't think I've classed on this show yet. I think this is the first time I've classed on Monty's with you. Very good. Okay, got the gun out. Got the gun out through the thing. Oh my goodness. This is what it's about for me. This is what it's about for me. I'm going through a phase of paying high-end painters, but actually tabletop quality is what it's about for me. Just the notion of the infantry here, which I just love with the Steel Legion. So, unwrapping slowly and talking about it. So, of course, as all things seem to in this channel, this relates to the origins of this channel, fundamentally. Monty working on a podcast perfectly fine, giving his ideas, giving reviews, what have you. And then basically, I've got to be careful with my hands. Basically being, just unable to give a review, basically. So, unable to do what I'm doing here in podcast form. So this is always a point of contention. Only very minor point here. But the plasma weapon is off, which doesn't really worry me. I've been told recently. But in the scheme of things, I don't really care. I mean, why would you make a ultra bright plasma weapon in contrast to these other things? So, my concern is that you don't want a single narrative through anything. You don't want a circumstance where there's only one view. It's like, okay, so you like wargaming, so you must be this kind of person, or you must have this political perspective. So we live in a world where one can't even talk about one's political perspectives with regards to certain things, particularly not about militarism or fascism or anything like that, because, we're being told that the Nazis still exist to this day, and all this other kind of very curious stuff. I'm currently reading the Nuremberg trials, or, reading the British analysis in this case, which is very interesting, associated with the discussion of Jackson. But I read a lot of military history, particularly Second World War history, which is one of the reasons I like Steel Legion. So, the narrative associated with, politics and fascism and militarism and what actually happened to the Nazis at the end of the war. I'm talking here about von Braun and Operation Paperclip and all the other things that don't have names, because basically there were tens of thousands of people who didn't make it to Nuremberg, so to speak, but were still alive. Many of them ended up in the US. And certainly with regards to von Braun and Paperclip, because, science is never... science can always take the bullet, so to speak, in these circumstances, but the financiers, the propagandists, all these folk comfortably moved to this country being the US, without any big discussion, no hoopla, no name like Operation Paperclip has for the scientists. So my perspective with regards to all these things is that you need to go back to the primary sources. And here I'm talking even about reading individual German soldiers' accounts in some circumstances, and I've read quite a bit of that too. But just to have a divergent political perspective, which isn't necessarily shaped by, look at this, it's done beautifully. So to this end, I don't have a dominant view. I don't have the view that either of the political parties in this country or in other countries offer associated with these things. I think fascism as it's defined, military, industry and government working closely together, is so part of the dominant narrative that, yeah, it remains incoherent, basically, to talk about, kids in parts of the US marching with tiki torches as being Nazis. The Nazis made NASA, The Nazis made all the amazing news media propaganda machines that we see in this country. The financing of the Nazi state, many of these people came to this country after the war and continued to operate in this way. So my view is that any historical understanding of Nazism, and you might wonder why I even choose to live in this country, but that's another side. But anyway, then if you look at any of these things, that Nazism became the superpowers on both directions, but in the US in particular. So that is a view that is a very minority view without question, but okay, so that's where I come to this thing from. That I don't like people telling me what my politics or identity or history or anything like that. And Henry Hyde is a very dominant political narrative, which he tries to foist on Wargaming. And although, for a variety of other smaller reasons, like it's a really boring movie, it's poorly edited, uses way too much drone footage, no one in their right mind would sit through 10 minutes of it. And my first watching, I couldn't sit through 10 minutes of it. I just found it too irritating. Anyway, so that was Military War Games, the movie. But yeah, it has this. It's narrated effectively by Henry Hyde in a variety of places. When he gets things wrong, he gets things really wrong. And then there's this dominant narrative associated with wargamers and PTSD, which I find is very political and really just stupid, and creating a narrative which I think really undermines this hobby. And creates, a false politicization of something which isn't about politics at all. Can you have pacifist wargamers? Is that possible? Can you have wargamers that actually have an understanding of military history that's against the context of the dominant political narratives in these countries? Well, I would hope so. I mean, that's certainly where I exist in this thing. So my view was that there was an unnecessary politicization. And this is a secondary view. My primary view is it's really boring, the movie. And it's not going to get people interested in war games at all. It's something where... And there was a model rail documentary. Part of my life is also associated with model rail, which was similar. I didn't put money into that, but I put money into this with the main hope that I'd see more of the Perrys, or more of Brian Ansell, or more of a variety of different folk, or Rick Priestley, actually talking candidly about what went into making this thing, there being the war games industry. And instead, I didn't get that. I got a really boring documentary that could have been edited down maybe in half, and a bunch of additional nonsense, which I didn't really want to watch. Anyway, I'm going to stop the video here, and I'm going to resume the reboxing and talk about something completely different.